discovery made headline news all over the world and really sort of captured public imagination.
Finally tonight, archaeologists in Egypt made a groundbreaking discovery this week under ancient sands.
Deserts may seem barren and empty, but they're anything but. In reality, they're packed with strange and fascinating finds, from terrifying recent discovery in Death Valley to ancient works of long-forgotten civilizations. Here are 20 of the strangest and most chilling things ever found in deserts. Number 20. Chinese desert patterns. Could this be the proof that we are looking for? Could it just possibly be aliens? Google Maps satellite imagery has given us so many new, and mostly unnecessary, insights into places on planet Earth, but it's also opened up a whole can of conspiracy theory worms. These are some weird patterns that were spotted by Google Earth out there in the Gobi Desert in China. There have been every sort of suggestion you can imagine, the media's favorite being that these are weapons testing sites. Beyond that, the conspiracy theories get much more specific and quite a lot scarier. There are some suggestions that these lines actually depict the layout of streets in Washington, D.C. or New York City. And naturally, there are those alien rumors. In this instance, people think that they are messages to, or perhaps even from, extraterrestrials. But as time has gone on, it's become quite clear to those in the know that these are almost certainly used to calibrate Chinese spy satellites. The general idea is that the zigzag lines are used by cameras on the satellites in order to focus and orient themselves in space. This isn't really news to any of the major nations on Earth. China is very well known to operate spy satellites, so it seems quite the logical conclusion that these weird grids are all about those machines. Could still be aliens though, couldn't it? China's not exactly forthcoming with its explanations, you know. Number 19. The unexplained gigantic marine man. There's a man in the remotest region of South Australia's outback standing around displaying his manhood, and he is so large that he has to be viewed from the air. Unlike most of the men that might boast such a thing, this guy's junk is so big that it can actually be seen from space. This is the marine man, also known as Stewart's Giant, a massive 2.5-mile-tall figure that is etched into the red dirt of the outback. The artwork is located over 400 miles to the north of Adelaide, showing a man with arms outstretched in a pose where he appears to be throwing a spear, a boomerang, or something similar. It's scratched out about 14 inches deep into the earth. The funny thing is, nobody really knows how he got there. In fact, nobody even knows how long it might have been there to start with. It's simply just too large to be seen from ground level and can only be viewed from the air. There's a good deal of disagreement about who actually created the marine man, and it is a mystery that may never be properly solved in our lifetime. Number 18. Desert graveyard for sea mammals. Here we are at the Atacama Desert in Chile. It is the oldest desert on Earth and has been in this state of semi-arid conditions for around 150 million years already. It is the driest non-polar desert in the world, and it is also pretty massive as well. It stretches across a huge swath of land, about 600 miles, between the Cordillera de la Costa mountain range at the coast and the Andes Mountains. This place can get really hot, as you know how it does in the desert. The temperatures can regularly hit up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 50 degrees Celsius, and there are very few animals or plants able to survive within the harsh conditions of this place. So, how exactly did this wind up being a place full of fossils of sea mammals? At 40 meters above sea level, there are fossils of 40 whales as well as some dolphins, seals, and aquatic sloths. In fact, it is the richest site on the planet for fossilized marine mammals. Many of the fossils are in a kind of heap altogether, so scientists believe that they probably died suddenly at sea, likely at the same time, and then washed up on the same shore, most likely as the result of harmful algae in the water. Time passed, and the tidal flat area gradually became the desert as tectonic plates pushed the shoreline higher and higher above sea level. It now sits much further from the coast than it once would have done. Number 17. Sudden Tunisian Desert Lake. Next up, we're in Tunisia and visiting a mysterious lake. How spooky. Well, it actually kind of is. This lake wasn't there 1 minute, and then suddenly, it was like a mirage had appeared in the desert landscape. It began as a beautiful turquoise oasis and then started turning into a kind of green sludge. The trouble is, a mysterious lake could contain all kinds of nasty stuff, but apparently, people were not actually too concerned about that and set about swimming and splashing all around in it anyway. The explanations for the sudden appearance of the lake are that it is likely a rupture in the rock above the level of the water table. The area has been used for mining and other disruptive activities that could cause this kind of sudden shift in the landscape. But the fact that it soon changed color would indicate that there was no fresh water entering the lake after its initial appearance. Gross. Number 16. Horned kangaroo fossils. Several previously unknown species were uncovered in archaeological digs in the Nullarbor Desert in Australia. These have included 5 new species of kangaroo, as well as an intact skeleton that had once belonged to a marsupial lion. Back in 2002, a bunch of digs were conducted in this relatively unexplored area, And before long, the archaeologists were knee-deep in crazy new fossils, like this mad one of a kangaroo that seemed to have had horns. Except, after they studied it closer, it was clear that those were not actually horns after all. Rather, they suspect that these protrusions were there to function as kinds of shields to protect the kangaroo's eyeballs. They think that this may have been for things like poking about in especially spiky bushes or even digging into the ground. But anyways, there you have it. Not as horny as they thought, just a bit bumpy. Now it's time for today's topic. During a recent scientific expedition in Death Valley, located within California's Mojave Desert, researchers stumbled upon something truly terrifying, a massive shell belonging to an unidentified ancient creature. The structure, which is eerily reminiscent of a giant armadillo shell, has baffled paleontologists as it does not match any known species. According to initial analysis, the shell appears to have belonged to a colossal predator that likely lived millions of years ago. What's even more unsettling is that scientists theorize these creatures spent most of their lives underground, explaining why no previous evidence of their existence has ever been found. The shell, now partially exposed due to shifting sands, measures over 25 feet in length, indicating a truly enormous creature capable of withstanding extreme environments. One paleontologist stated, "Its sheer size and structure suggest it was built for protection in harsh conditions." But this isn't any armadillo. We are looking at a predator we know nothing about. This discovery raises serious questions. How many unknown species remain hidden beneath the Earth's surface? Could these creatures or their descendants still be living underground today? Scientists are calling for further exploration of the area while issuing a cautious reminder. The deserts might hold far more mysteries than we ever imagined. Number 15. Fairy circles stump scientists for years. This area is in the Namib Desert in southern Africa and is most famous for its unusual features, one of which has had many people stumped: the phenomenon known as fairy circles. These are patches of earth in perfectly circular shapes, which are barren while grasses and other vegetation seem to grow all around the outside. They can range from about 10 feet in diameter to 65 feet. As to be expected, the dawn of Google Earth and ubiquitous drone cameras has allowed us to see the true extent of these strange sights, leaving people baffled. Could it actually be fairies? Perhaps it's aliens? Who could possibly say? The locals have a theory of their own, and they reckon these are the footprints left behind by the gods. Oddly enough, these circles are evenly spaced, adding to the supernatural feel of the phenomenon. Scientists, however, have a couple of theories. One suggests that as resources in the desert become scarce, vegetation and wildlife spread out to avoid competition. This thins out smaller plants as they cannot get enough water to survive, causing them to disappear at the edges of these patches. Another theory involves termites that live beneath the earth in this region. It is believed that the areas between their colonies create no man's lands, resulting in these barren circular shapes. Number 14. The abandoned domes of Casa Grande. These bizarre-looking bumps in the barren landscape of Arizona were initially constructed in 1983 by Intercon Technology Incorporated. The company manufactured circuit boards for computers and watches, and they built this place as part of a large-scale plan to fully relocate the company from California to Casa Grande, Arizona. These weird-shaped buildings were designed to be low-cost and quick to build. They were also meant to be super efficient and well-insulated. Each dome cost about $150,000 and took 6 weeks to build. However, after all that effort, the company stopped the project before it was completed. They never moved to Arizona, as they defaulted on a loan, and the bank repossessed everything, including the weird domes in the desert. Since then, these domes have been left abandoned and useless, an eyesore and probably a poor addition to the natural environment as well. Number 13. A giant stone hand in Chile. Back in Chile's Atacama Desert, this time we're looking at a massive sculpture called the Mano del Desierto. This sculpture is the work of a Chilean artist, and it can be found about 60 kilometers southeast of Antofagasta beside the Pan American Highway. This massive hand is actually a work of art referencing the terrible era of the Pinochet regime and the awful human rights violations that occurred during that time. Its striking placement in the middle of one of the driest places on Earth creates a haunting sense of isolation, mirroring the despair and helplessness faced by victims of oppression. The hand itself seems to be reaching out for help or salvation, a silent plea for justice and remembrance. The sheer scale of the sculpture has made it a popular attraction for travelers and photographers, despite its somber undertone. At sunrise and sunset, the hand casts long, eerie shadows, adding to its mystique and emotional impact. The sculpture is set on a base of concrete and iron. It's a whopping 36 feet tall and sits at an altitude of 1,100 meters above sea level. Every once in a while, the piece gets covered in graffiti, but it also receives regular cleaning to keep it from becoming messy. Number 12. Ancient Egyptian burial boat. This discovery in the sand of Egypt is believed to be more than 4,500 years old. It is an ancient Egyptian burial boat found in a tomb made of mud bricks. The boat has remained surprisingly well preserved, despite being one of the oldest ever found. Previously, boat burials were believed to have been the preserve of royalty, but the discovery of this particular vessel far from the royal burial grounds has shed new light on this understanding. The tomb itself was large, indicating that the person buried there was likely a member of the ancient Egyptian elite. The boat was preserved in a reasonable state, with planks and pegs still in their correct positions. Even the battens covering the seams of the boat were still visible, along with some ropes. While it remains uncertain why Egyptians buried boats with the deceased, one belief is that they took items needed in life with them into the afterlife. Another idea suggests the boats symbolized transport to the afterlife in barges. Regardless of the reason, archaeologists are thrilled to have found such an intact example instead of a pile of dust. Number 11. 8 million mummified dogs. Next up, we have exactly what you'd expect to find in the middle of the desert: 8 million mummified dogs. Yes, this is not an exaggeration, there were actually this many dogs. This decidedly creepy and macabre discovery is the result of the ancient Egyptian obsession with the god of death, Anubis. This particular god had the head of a jackal and received a lot of attention from people hoping to win favor before their own journey to the afterlife. Further excavations revealed that these mummified dogs ranged from adult animals to tiny, barely born puppies, indicating that the breeding and sacrificial practices were likely carried out on a massive scale. Archaeologists also discovered remnants of other animals, such as foxes and jackals, further emphasizing the site's religious significance. The staggering number of mummies suggests a well-organized system, possibly supported by temple priests who raised and prepared the animals for offerings. Interestingly, the practice was not limited to dogs alone. Similar cults existed for other deities, involving cats, ibises, and even crocodiles. It's a sobering glimpse into how religion, economics, and ritual intertwined in ancient Egyptian society. Although evidence shows there were millions of mummies, many have disintegrated over thousands of years, and others were stolen and likely used as fertilizer. Oh, how delightful. Number 10. A massive stash of vintage video games. What do you do if you make a video game that is so absolutely terrible that it becomes a source of shame likely to sink your entire company? Well, you take that video game and bury every last copy of it in the desert, of course. This is the completely insane and kind of hilarious true story of the Atari ET video game from 1983. The game had been released after a huge amount of hype as a tie-in with the movie, except the game turned out to be a massive stinky flop. In fact, this video game has gone down in history as being the absolute worst of all time. To bury their shame and attempt to resuscitate their dying company, Atari piled all the remaining copies of the ET game into 13 trucks and sent them off to a landfill in New Mexico in the dead of night. Apparently, all the games were buried and then concreted over as if they were toxic waste or something equally noxious, and they simply hoped that would be the end of it all. Except that it wasn't. People found out, and Atari has literally never lived it down. The company went under, and to add insult to injury, the internet dug the whole sorry affair up again in 2014. A documentary film crew turned up in New Mexico and began excavating. While they didn't find the millions of video games rumored to be buried, they unearthed about 1,300 cartridges. As for the rest, it wasn't just ET. The entire company was in trouble, and they were dumping all their mess out there in the desert. It didn't save them in the end, but it did make for a good story that still rumbles around the internet today. Number 9. Egyptian cone patterns. This is the Desert Breathland art installation. It was first spotted by Google Earth enthusiasts back in November 2013 when they began to wonder what these huge spirals in the desert were and where the heck they had come from. You know, they thought it was aliens though, right? I mean, after all, aliens love nothing more than making weird circles in massive open spaces. It's kind of what they're famous for. But in actuality, it turned out to be a beautiful and enormous art installation created by a team of artists known collectively as DAST. Their names are Danae Stratou, Alexandra Stratou, and Stella Constantinides. The project has apparently been in place since all the way back in 1997. It's just that nobody ever really paid any attention to it or even noticed it at all. The piece features a circular pool of water at the center of double spiral arrangements of neatly crafted cone shapes. It sits in the eastern Sahara Desert, near the border of the Red Sea. The artists have said that although the installation can be experienced from the air or via Google Earth, it also offers a more personal and interactive experience for visitors who walk along its spiral paths. If you happen to like that sort of thing rather than staring at desert oddities from your couch via a satellite image. Number 8. The works of old men. Back in the 1920s, planes flying over the desert spotted thousands of mysterious stone buildings, known by the Bedouin people as the works of old men. In modern times, with advancements in mapping, satellite imagery, and drone footage, we've gained more insight into these structures. These formations, several thousands of years old, can be found across the Middle East, from Syria to Yemen. Many of them cannot be seen from ground level but become visible from an aerial perspective. Researchers have identified various shapes among these formations, including wheel-like structures, kites used for hunting, and elongated lines whose purposes remain elusive. Some of the kites are believed to have been designed to trap animals, showcasing advanced planning and ingenuity. The wheels, with their intricate patterns, may have been connected to agricultural activities or even celestial alignments, though evidence is still being analyzed. Intriguingly, the materials used to construct these formations were often transported over significant distances, suggesting a coordinated effort by large communities. Although they look a lot like marks often associated with aliens, they're actually just really old structures created by ancient humans. Even the circular formations. These fascinating constructions give us a glimpse into the creativity and resourcefulness of our ancestors, though their exact purposes remain the subject of ongoing research. Their discovery continues to fuel debate over how ancient societies functioned in arid environments and what these structures reveal about their day-to-day lives. Number 7. New Dead Sea Scrolls found in a cave in the Judean desert. In March 2021, fragments of what are believed to be new pieces of the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the Judean desert in Israel. It's believed these fragments were hidden during a Jewish revolt against Rome almost 2,000 years ago. The Israel Antiquities Authority announced the discovery as part of an archaeological project that had been ongoing for 4 years. The scroll fragments included parts of the Book of the 12 Minor Prophets, with specific references to the books of Zechariah and Nahum. Interestingly, the text on the fragments was written in Greek, with the name of God appearing in ancient Hebrew script, a blend that speaks to the diverse cultural and linguistic influences of the time. The discovery was made in the Cave of Horror, aptly named due to the skeletons found there decades earlier, believed to be Jewish refugees who died during the Bar Kokhba revolt. Archaeologists had to rappel down steep cliffs to access the cave, underscoring the lengths to which people went to hide these sacred texts. While researchers were excited about the find, the fragments were literally just scraps, making it difficult to piece together what they mean in a broader context. It had been 60 years since any other significant Dead Sea Scroll fragments were uncovered, so even small discoveries like these generate considerable excitement and renewed interest in ancient texts. These findings continue to fuel debates about the origins of the scrolls, their authors, and their significance to both religious and historical scholarship. Number 6. A hidden swimming pool in the Mojave Desert. Well, this is a slightly odd thing. The idea of a swimming pool in the Mojave Desert seems relatively sensible. It's hot there, and a dip to cool off might be a pleasant thing to do. But the trouble is, any potential swimmers are going to have to go on a kind of mission quest to find the darn thing. This is the work of an artist named Alfredo Barsuglia. It's an 11-foot-long freshwater pool with a solar-powered filter located in the middle of the desert. While the pool itself isn't especially thrilling, the appeal lies in the adventure of finding it. The journey is part of the experience, as visitors must trek through miles of arid and unforgiving desert terrain. To add to the intrigue, the exact location is kept secret, heightening the sense of exclusivity and discovery. Those who embark on this quest often describe the solitude and surreal contrast of a pristine pool in the harsh desert as a meditative experience. The artist intended the pool to symbolize luxury and scarcity, making it a statement on resource use and our relationship with nature. Anyone is allowed to use the pool, but to do so, they must obtain GPS coordinates and a key from an architectural center in West Hollywood. From there, they must drive out into the desert, far from any roads or markers. Only one person or a very small group is allowed to use it in any 24-hour period. The concept emphasizes the effort of seeking and discovering something unique, though it may not appeal to everyone. Still, it's an intriguing project for those who enjoy a touch of mystery and adventure. Number 5. A fake Egyptian city buried in California. There are a bunch of ghost towns and similar oddities scattered across the Californian desert. The movie industry has been building and abandoning sets out there for 100 years. One of the stranger discoveries is a fake ancient Egyptian city buried in the desert. This is the leftover set from a silent movie made by director Cecil B. DeMille back in 1923. The movie was The Ten Commandments, and it was a colossal and elaborate production involving more than 1,500 laborers building this gigantic set near the coastal town of Guadalupe. Time and weather have claimed those plaster replicas, but they are still there. It's hard to hide a temple that was 12 stories high and 800 feet wide, complete with 2 enormous statues of pharaohs on either side, an avenue of 20 sphinxes, and a massive temple gate. The film itself required a whole movable city of people, including 125 cooks, military doctors, thousands of actors and crew members, and a host of animals. In the end, the city was not removed as had been promised in the original agreement. Instead, it was toppled over and then covered with sand. This is not the absolute best way to hide your massive, incongruous ancient replica city, but hey, it's Hollywood after all. In the early 1980s, the set was rediscovered, and the entire place was unearthed, just like a real archaeological dig, only in the Californian sand. Number 4. The ghost town of the Mojave Desert. The images of Kalmanskap in the middle of the Namibian desert are haunting and fascinating. This is a ghost town that sits in the heart of what is known as the Forbidden Zone. Despite its abandoned status and historically forbidden nature, it has now become a tourist destination. The once thriving mining town was controlled by German Southwest Africa, and the diamonds found in this region were soon exploited by the German Empire. The village was built in the style of German towns and had all the facilities you might expect, such as a hospital, school, power station, and more. It also had luxuries like a theater, ballroom, skittle alley, casino, ice factory, and even an X-ray station. Weirdly enough, there was also a tram. At its peak, the town was a shining example of opulence in the harsh desert, with imported goods and materials brought in from Europe. However, as the diamond reserves dwindled and richer deposits were discovered elsewhere, the town was abandoned almost overnight. The relentless desert began reclaiming the town, with buildings slowly filling with sand and being battered by the elements. Today, the eerie combination of human-made structures and the encroaching desert creates a surreal and otherworldly landscape. Around 35,000 visitors come every year, bussed in by local private companies. The ghost town now provides a significant portion of the revenue for the nearby communities. Number 3. A fake Prada store in the Texas desert. The Prada Marfa may look like a designer store in the middle of the Texas desert, but it's actually an art installation. Created by Scandinavian artists Michael Elmgreen and Inger Dragset, Prada Marfa is a non-functional replica storefront, a bizarre sculpture on the edge of a remote West Texas town. The idea was for it to gradually erode and disappear into the landscape. It was never intended to cause a stir, and the artists hoped it would remain a rumor rather than a real-life photo opportunity. However, social media had other plans. The fake Prada store became an odd phenomenon, even appearing in Beyoncé's Instagram feed. The installation has been there for nearly 2 decades, despite legal issues, vandalism, and much more attention than expected. Within hours of its construction, it had been spray-painted and robbed, with all the right foot, only shoes and handbags stolen. The place had to be repainted, the glass replaced, and the stock replenished to prevent it from becoming an eyesore. Now, the fake Prada store requires regular maintenance and has become a must-see stop for influencers and Instagrammers visiting Marfa. The irony is not lost on anyone. Number 2. The Clown Motel in Tonopah, Nevada. Coulrophobia, or the irrational fear of clowns, is a legitimate phobia. However, cultural representations of clowns in media have turned this fear into a widespread phenomenon. Where clowns used to be sources of fun and entertainment, today they are more likely to be associated with creepiness, making a lot of people uncomfortable. This unusual hotel in the Nevada desert may be your idea of a terrifying nightmare or a fun, themed place to stay. Its position at the edge of a long stretch of empty desert makes it a convenient last resort for weary travelers. However, the endless clowns staring at you might not be as relaxing as the place should ideally be. Guests often describe the ambience as both whimsical and deeply unnerving, with some even reporting they had difficulty sleeping due to the feeling of being constantly watched. The hotel's decor includes a towering clown statue outside the entrance, setting the tone for what lies within. At night, the dim lighting casts eerie shadows across the painted clown murals, amplifying the uncanny atmosphere. For the brave-hearted, the hotel also boasts a collection of rare and antique clown memorabilia that enthusiasts will appreciate. Clowns are everywhere here, life-sized ones, tiny porcelain statues, and sad-eyed faces staring out from every wall. For those who find clowns unsettling, it's a uniquely terrifying experience. For others, it's just a quirky, themed getaway in the middle of nowhere. Either way, it's an unforgettable stay. Number 1. The world-renowned Nazca Lines in Peru. Finally, we arrive at something that could actually be aliens, or at least that's what some people believe. The Nazca Lines in Peru are a collection of enormous geoglyphs, drawings on the ground, found across the coastal plains of Peru and South America. These lines were created around 2,000 years ago by the ancient Nazca people. The designs range from straight lines to geometric shapes and massive pictorial representations of animals and plants. The largest of these designs measures up to 30 miles in length. Intriguingly, some of the lines form complex patterns that are nearly impossible to fully appreciate without being viewed from the air, which raises questions about how the Nazca people planned and executed these enormous works of art. The precision of the lines has led to theories that they may have used rudimentary surveying tools, or even hot air balloons to gain a bird's-eye view of their creations. Other researchers suggest the geoglyphs might have served as pathways for ceremonial processions or markers for underground water sources. The Nazca lines continue to baffle scientists and historians. No one is exactly sure why they were made or what they symbolize. Some believe they served ritualistic purposes or were connected to astronomical events. Regardless of their purpose, they are breathtaking examples of ancient artistry. And thanks to modern drone technology, we can now see them in all their glory from above. Thank heavens for drones. That's it from the desert. It's going to take days to shake off all that sand from those hard-to-reach places. Which of these weird discoveries makes you want to grab a bucket and spade to start digging? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to check out the other cool videos on the screen, and I'll see you next time.